Hey everybody, welcome to Cousin Jack Carves. So today we're going to do a little painting video. It's been probably a couple of years since I've done a painting video. And I want to try out two different painting techniques. One will be a dry brush technique, and one will be sort of similar to a reverse dry brush technique. Should be interesting. So I've carved a couple of practice faces here just for the purpose of this video. So I don't really care what happens to these. So yeah. Let's go ahead and talk about the paint. So today I'm using acrylic craft paints, the kind you would see in a lot of craft stores. Folk Art is one of the brands. Daco Art is another. Craft Smart, they're Ceramcoat. Lots of different brands. They're pretty much equal as far as I can tell. So when I'm painting, I like to dilute my colors quite a bit. And I'm going to use the same colors for the hair and beard and everything on both of these carvings because I want to be able to compare the results without saying, well, there was an issue with, a different color or something like that. So to start out, I'm going to use some brown, and I'll be putting that on the hair and also on the beard of both of these little guys. So there you go, put a little brown paint in there and we'll mix that up. Make sure it's diluted really well. There are many different ways to go about painting. Lots and lots of them. Some people kind of get stuck and they get into a deal where they say they don't like painting. I'll show you another thing I have here. This is a glass tile. You can go to a floor store. I have a whole box of these that we bought several years ago. I use them for a lot of purposes, including mixing paints. They make a great palette. And it's such a flat surface, it's perfect for taking a piece of sandpaper and creating yourself a little sharpening stone made of sandpaper and glass tile. We've got some brown here. You want to mix it really well because some of these acrylic paints will have these little clumps in there, so you want to mix them up until you're happy with the result. This will be, like I said, a reverse order on these two because of the way I want to try these two different techniques. So we'll use a brown undercoating for one and a white undercoating with brown on top for the other. So I'm going to start with the brown undercoating on this guy here, which means we'll do white brush on top of that with the dry brush technique. Okay, so we'll just do a little brown. Now you can see I've used my wood burner to put in some lines here. Those lines help with detail, but they also have a primary purpose of making sure that the paint doesn't bleed over from one area to another. Now, I don't care a whole lot if this brown gets on the hat because it's going to be sort of a brown color anyway. We'll do the other side. So you can see, like I said, this is watered down quite a bit. And a lot of wood carvers like to have an effect where you can still see the grain and tell it's a wood carving, and so it's not just looking like plastic. And so, to do that, you want to water down your paint, thin it out. It'll last longer that way anyway. Now, there are certain applications where you want to go full strength paint without watering it down. So, for example, when I paint the eyes, usually I'll want a thicker white paint for the eyes. All right, let's move on to the beard and mustache now. And as far as painting is concerned, like I said, some people just don't like to paint. I know carvers who don't enjoy painting. I can tell you it can be just as much fun, it is for me, as the carving. And I think that all stems from the same source, right? Carving is more enjoyable once you have confidence. You've built your skills to a point where you're confident with what you're doing and happy with your outcomes. So this is moving along pretty quickly with the brown. I'm going to do these eyebrows up here too, but I'm going to use a smaller paintbrush for that, just so I can be more careful. And this little hillbilly character I'm painting right here, he's looking a little sad. This is the face of a man who is slap out of moonshine. And we'll let that dry. While that's happening, we're going to paint the hair and beard here on this guy. And I'm going to use white as the sort of undercoat. All right, so let's go back to my larger brush, get that soaking in some water. I'm going to grab some white. This is Ceramcoat Oyster White. This is sort of an off-white. It's a little less bright than just a pure white color. So we'll put some paint into the old ice cube tray here. Add some water. And get that mixed up. Now, you know, when you're dry brushing, and we'll see this a little later when I go to dry brush that hillbilly, you absolutely don't want to use watered down paint. You want to use the paint right out of your container, and then you want your brush to be almost null and void of paint. You want it to be very dry, hence the name dry brush, right? Yeah. All right, so we're getting some of these particles and little clumps mixed out of the white paint. Yeah, that'll do. So we'll go ahead and do some white paint on the hair. And then we'll move on to the beard and mustache. And this guy here, this is the face of a man who just saw his credit card bill from the holidays. Yeah, it's that look. Now the thing with white paint, it doesn't seem to cover all that well. So you really don't have to dilute it a lot. Like I said, especially when you're painting eyes, you want that to be pretty much full strength white paint. And this, being an off-white, is a pretty good color for eyes and teeth and those sorts of things. This guy has no hat. And you see that white paint running there? I don't care. It's all right. It's going to be easy to cover that up. And if you're ever painting and you get some paint where you don't want it, you have a couple of things you can do. One thing, you can go to your water, right? Get your brush wet, or grab a different brush, get it wet, and get in where that paint is and just wash it right out quickly before it dries. The other thing you can do is let that paint dry where it is, wherever it went to that you didn't want it. After it's dry, you take your knife and just slice that right off of there. Use that universal eraser, the knife. You can see why I'm holding this upside down, because when that paint does run, I want it to run towards the hair that I'm painting and not down the face. Yeah, so now before I move on to the beard and mustache, I'm going to add a little bit more paint to my mix. Should thicken that up a little bit. Now because I've added more paint, I'm going to mix it some more. Sometimes I want to use the butt end of my paintbrush here. For that, I can put more pressure, and helps my bristle brush last longer because I'm not using that. Let's see what that's looking like. Pretty good, yeah. I want to be careful not to get the white paint on the little bit of bottom lip that's going to be showing here on this guy. I should have mentioned already that prior to painting these two little practice faces here, I did get them wet. I wanted to have some water on these pieces. It's a technique you can use. The water will help to carry the paint down into the pores of the wood. So much for that. Okay, we'll let that go ahead and dry. All right, so now we'll just add a little bit of color to that hat. I want to go for sort of a leather look on this hat, and for that I want to use raw sienna. This is from Folk Art. It's a color that I think gives you a nice sort of leather color. So let's mix some up here. Now I'm going to go with a little bit less water on this mixture. Yeah, okay. We'll paint some of this hat. We'll start on the top. Now this is the end grain. Of course, the end grain is going to soak up a lot of paint, right? Because that's where the wood, the end of the grain, has an opening like a straw, just sucks it right in. Whereas now I'm on the side of that grain, running up and down the piece this way instead of the open end. Alright, so let's add some color to his face now. I am going to use a little bit smaller brush for that. And I think I'll go with some magenta from Folk Art. And for this, I really will be just very carefully adding a little bit of color here and there. See how it looks? Alright, so we'll add a little color on his nose. Now if you feel like it's too much, get your brush wet and go right back in on there. Kind of diluting that paint after it's been applied. If I wanted to, I could even take a little dab of white. Add that. So he's got some color going on. Let's try and add some to this guy too. Picking up some of this diluted brown color that I used for the hair, just adding that to the face here. I should say I used for the hair on this guy, right? The brown color. And we'll add some more of that little light wash of brown. Now that I'm thinking about it, I forgot to put the white on his eyebrows, so let's do that. Picking up a little bit of that white just to soften up some of this brown here. So the thing about skin, right? We think about someone's actual face. It's not all one color. Especially when you get to be as old as me. You have all kinds of different colors popping up on you from years of being in the sun and everything. A little bit of that brown on the hillbilly face too. Just enough to add a little bit of color there. That's all we're looking for, right? Okay, so this is where we are so far. Next, what I'll do is go ahead and paint these eyeballs. Get that white paint on there and give it some time to dry before we add the black for the pupil. This time I'm just going to go ahead and put some paint on the glass. I'm going to pick up this little brush right here. This is from Daco. And this is a fine detail knife, and you can see it's called Tight Spot. It has this angled end to it, and it's designed for getting into tight spots, just like it says. I'm going to grab a little bit of that white. We'll start with this guy because it's more difficult, right? He's got those smaller eyes. I use this brush a lot. I like that angle, and it comes in a set. You can get a whole set of these Daco detail paint brushes. I will put a link in the description below the video here, so you can go and find it. I think it's available on Amazon. We'll give that a chance to dry, and we'll start working on these cartoony eyeballs here for the hillbilly. We'll let that coat dry and come back onto this guy. Give him a second coat of the white. Like I said, the white doesn't have the coverage that you find on a lot of other colors. And rather than trying to clump it all on there, which I don't want, right? There's a big clumpy spot on the eyeball. I'd much rather go 2 coats that are thin to get the coverage. And if the pencil marks that I put on the eyeballs or the pupils show through, that's not a problem. I'm going to paint right over that with the black. All right, so we've got the whites of the eyes painted now. So this hillbilly, because I'm going to do a dry brush on there with white on the hair, the beard, the mustache, what I want to do is just go back and give it a little bit more color of the brown before I put that dry brush over the top. I want to be able to show the contrast, right? All right, so now we've got that dry brush almost ready. We'll let that brown paint dry. Being left-handed, I think I'll move the paint to my left side finally after crossing over for the entire video. All right, so for this other technique that I'm going to use, sort of an anti-dry brush, reverse dry brush, I don't know what to call it. I'm going to take everything that I painted white with the hair, eyebrows, the beard, the mustache, and cover it with the brown. I'm going to add more brown paint to the mixture here. That's just a little too thin on top of the white. And you can see the difference, right? You can see the color difference. I want the brown to look the same on both of these. And of course, this guy has an undercoating of white, so it might take a little oomph to get that done. That's the difference between try and triumph. It's the oomph. All right. Let's try some more paint. Brown paint. A little thicker, a little darker. Starting to get closer to this same color that I have here. Just needs a little more work. Well, I think I'll probably have to hit that brown hair, especially near the top again. But first we'll let that dry a little bit. And while we're doing that, we'll add some more color on the face. So I'm going to use Daco Art Deep Midnight Blue. And this is going to be highly diluted. All I'm really looking for is a little bit of a shadow color. Very little paint, That's all you need on this, because this deep midnight blue is a powerful color. Switch to this smaller brush, and we'll just pull out some of this midnight blue and get it to where it's just a hint of color. That's all we need. All right, so we'll come in here on this guy's bags under the eyes here, and that's still not diluted enough. We'll just get that wet brush on it. Like I say, all we really want here is a hint of color. I'm going to go on the eyelids. And I'll add a little midnight blue on this guy. I am making a mess with this brown paint, I'll tell you. I'm still not quite there yet on the eyeballs for this guy. Definitely going to need more white paint. Well, since I have the deep midnight blue already available to me here on my palette, I'm just going to go ahead and paint the base on these two things real quickly. What I like to do is use a paint stick for that. It's just a wood screw glued into an old dowel rod. It makes it handy for when you are painting and finishing and you don't want to be holding on to the piece because your fingers will get in the way of your paint. Alright, we'll go ahead and do the same thing with this other guy. Give that deep midnight blue a shot on the bottom. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I want to go ahead and put a little more brown on the hair for this carving right here. Get it a little bit darker so it has a better match with the hair on this hillbilly. And then I also need to put the brown on the eyebrows for this guy. Some of this brown paint has been pooling up in this hair. All right, let's go ahead and get out the black paint. We'll put in some pupils for these two dudes and give them a little life, right? And one of the things I like to do when I'm putting in the eyeballs is just kind of put a marker, a little dot with a toothpick, sort of a reference point. And I've got some folk art licorice. Some paint on my toothpick here. Thinking about these two eyes, and I can see where the pencil marks were. So I've got one here and one here. And then this guy was looking this way. So I had one here and right there. All right, so now there are a lot of different ways you can go about making these pupils. Something you can do is go online. You can get a set of these stylus. Right, there's little steel balls, different sizes. You can get a whole set of them, relatively cheap. I think it's like $8 or something like that. And they have, like I said, a variety of different sizes. Makes it easy to make a little round mark. And you can use that when you're putting a pattern on a handkerchief or bandana, or maybe you want to use it to make a nice round eyeball on a character that you're carving. You can definitely do that. All right. In this case, I want to start with one side. And get that done before I move on to the other side. I'm using that little detail brush again, the one that's for tight spots. So now that I have this first side done, there, it helps me when I go to this side to match up as far as the same size. Now, if you do mess up, don't worry about it. As I mentioned before, if you're not happy, you just take your knife, carve off the paint, and try again. Believe me, I have done that before. It works. Let's move on to this guy. I'm gonna look over to the side here, do a little side eye. So we'll start in that corner. And we'll come over here. Now once that black dries, I might go back in with the toothpick and put a little dot of white like shine in the pupil, right? That'd be later. For right now, I think it's time to go ahead and dry brush. Now, when you're doing a dry brush technique, you want to have a brush that's got a fairly loose kind of bristle structure, right? And I've used this one. This is another one. Sunny has a CoverGirl. This is an old makeup brush. It's got a loose bristle, but it's very, very soft. These bristles are really soft. And it does work, but I think for today I want to use this one because it's got stiffer bristles on there. And what we're going to do is take our white paint that's on our palette right there. We're going to get some of that onto the bristles of our brush. First, I'm going to spread this paint out a little bit. Pick up some of it, you can see, and then get rid of it. You can test it on your thumbnail. You can see it's pretty dry. All right, so we'll hit the old hillbilly with the dry brush. Let's see how it looks. Start on this beard area. So there we've got some dry brush effect on that guy. And now for the other guy. And this is an experiment, folks. This is something I'm not sure how it's going to turn out. Don't really know. What I'm going to do is hit this guy with some sandpaper, more or less. The idea is, similar to the dry brush, to have an effect that shows the contrast between the highlighted color and the darker color underneath. In this case, we have a white color underneath this brown. My experiment is to see if the white will show through on the highlighted, the high areas, right, and leave the brown, darker color on the low setting areas because the sandpaper. Today I'm going to use a couple of different types, I guess. I'm going to start with this Abranet. This is very flexible. This is the container it comes in, Abranet dust-free sanding. You can get a whole set of this stuff and it comes in a variety of grits. It goes from, this one is a 600 grit and it goes all the way down to I think 80 grit. It has the roughest, coarsest that it comes in. Now I'm using it because it, like I said, it's very flexible. You can see, right? It's like net. On one side it feels like sort of that Velcro backing. And then the other side you have your grit. Like I said, this one is 600. We'll see how it does. Now you can always take a regular piece of sandpaper and cut it down into little pieces and use that too. It's, you know, you can bend it and flex it and fold it and anything you want. Let's just see what happens. No promises, folks. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen, but we'll give it a shot here. Yeah, it's starting to happen. Let's see how this works out. Let's try those eyebrows. Interesting, I would say. Let's just take these guys off here now. So, like I said earlier, there's so many different ways you can paint and get different effects. Sometimes all you have to do is just kind of experiment, right? Have some fun, carve a couple of pieces you don't really care about, and then see what happens. I would say that the results are similar, a little bit different, I think. So for this guy, doing the dry brush on the eyebrows was more or less difficult. You know, you have a brush this big and you're trying to hit a size that small. Whereas with the eyebrows here, I think you can get a more detailed kind of look and better effect with the sort of reverse dry brush deal. Using the sandpaper seems to work better for that. As far as the beard and mustache, I guess it just depends which look you prefer. I think the hair is similar on both. The beard and mustache is a little different. I think it's probably because I started with the beard on the dry brush. I had more paint loaded on the brush right there. Yeah. Interesting. Would I do it again? Maybe. Yeah. This effect with the sandpaper might be easier than dry brushing. I'll tell you another reason why. When you're dry brushing, you have that big old brush. You're trying to get this hair. When you're close to this hat, it's really difficult to do that without getting dry brush color on the hat. Well, there's only one last thing to do, and that's give that little dot of white in the eyeballs. All right, well, tell me what you think, all right? What do you prefer? Do you like the look of the dry brush better? Or this sort of reverse dry brush effect? What do you think? And have you ever tried these two different techniques? I want to thank you for joining me today, folks. And if you like this video, you'll probably like this next one that I'll put on the screen. It's going to show you some painting techniques that I did a couple years ago and also antiquing with turd polish. And it's a recipe I learned from Chris Hammock. We'll see you next time.